Somewhere over the jungle of Guam, a helicopter is flying low and slow, and it is dropping dead mice out of the sky. Not live mice, dead ones. Each one has been fitted with a single tablet of painkiller and tied to a tiny parachute made of cardboard and green tissue paper. The parachutes are not designed to land. They are designed to get tangled in the treetops so that the dead mice hang there, in the canopy, waiting. This is not a stunt. It is not a joke. It is a real, federally funded operation that the United States government has been running for years, and it costs millions of dollars. The most powerful military on Earth, dropping poisoned mice on little paper parachutes into a forest. And here's the part that should stop you cold. It is working. It might be the only thing that does. Because the enemy those mice are meant to kill has already done something no army ever could. It conquered an entire American island. It silenced its forests. It plunged its cities into darkness. And right now, it is trying to find its way onto a plane to Hawaii. To understand how it came to this, how we ended up bombing a jungle with Tylenol and dead mice, you have to begin with a sound. Or rather, with the moment that sound disappeared. If you had walked through the forests of Guam in the 1960s, the noise would have surrounded you. Birdsong, constant and layered. Dozens of species calling over each other. Guam is a tropical island in the Western Pacific, an American territory, and its jungles were once alive with birds found nowhere else on the planet. And then, slowly, over a couple of decades, the birds began to vanish. Not all at once. First in one part of the island, then spreading outward like a stain. By the 1980s, stretches of Guam's forest had gone completely, eerily silent. No calls, no wings, nothing. For years, nobody could explain it. People blamed disease. They blamed pesticides. They blamed some mysterious illness sweeping through the birds. But a young scientist named Julie Savage wasn't convinced. She started mapping where the birds were disappearing and when, and she noticed that the wave of silence matched something else moving across the island, almost perfectly. Another invader, one that had arrived quietly years earlier, that almost no one had thought to blame. In 1987, she laid out the evidence, and it was damning. Guam's birds were not getting sick. They were being eaten, every last one of them, swallowed by a snake that should never have been there in the first place. It was called the brown tree snake. It was not native to Guam. It had no business being within thousands of miles of the place. And by the time anyone understood what it was doing, it was already far too late to stop it. The question was how a single kind of snake had managed to eat an entire island's worth of birds. And the answer is genuinely frightening. The brown tree snake came from the other side of the Pacific, from the forests of Papua New Guinea, Northern Australia, and the Solomon Islands. Nobody packed it deliberately. Sometime in the late 1940s, in the chaos after the Second World War, at least one of these snakes slid into a piece of military cargo, a ship's hold or a crate of equipment, and rode it all the way to Guam. The island was a major hub for American forces in the Pacific. Crates moved through it constantly. All it took was one pregnant female to step off into a place with no idea what had just arrived. And Guam, it turned out, was paradise for a snake like this. Back home, the brown tree snake had predators, competitors, and diseases. Everything that kept its numbers in check. On Guam, it had none of that. What it had instead was a buffet. The island was packed with birds that had evolved for thousands of years with no large snakes around, which meant they had no fear of them, no defenses to protect their nests. The snakes are superb climbers. They go straight up into the canopy, into the exact places where birds sleep and lay their eggs, and they hunt at night when the birds are roosting and helpless. So the snake simply ate its way across the island, nest by nest, generation by generation. The numbers it reached are almost hard to believe. At the peak of the invasion, scientists estimated there were as many as 50 brown tree snakes packed into a single acre of Guam forest. Across the whole island, the population may have climbed to around 2 million snakes. 2 million. On an island you can drive across in an afternoon. They wiped out 10 of Guam's 12 native forest bird species. The 2 that survive are barely hanging on. They took out most of the island's native lizards, and 2 of its 3 native bat species along with them. And killing the birds was only the beginning, because the birds had a job. In a tropical forest, birds are the gardeners. They eat fruit and carry the seeds across the island and drop them far from the parent tree, which is how new trees take root. Strip the birds out, and the whole system starts to seize up. On Guam, researchers found that without birds to carry them, the vast majority of seeds now fall straight down beneath the parent tree and die there. New seedlings are down by as much as 90% for some species. The snake didn't just empty the trees, it started slowly to kill the forest itself. It came for the people too. Brown tree snakes love to climb, and on Guam that means power lines. They slither up poles and across wires and short out the grid. Through the 1990s, the snakes were causing well over 100 power outages a year. Blackouts that hit homes, businesses, and military bases alike, with the damage running into the millions. The snake would crawl into houses at night. Infants were bitten in their cribs. An entire island was being held hostage by a reptile that had no reason to be there, and nothing anyone tried could meaningfully push it back, which is when the scientists started looking for a weakness, any weakness at all. And they found one in the strangest possible place. The weakness was a pill in your medicine cabinet, acetaminophen. The active ingredient in Tylenol, the painkiller hundreds of millions of people take for a headache without a second thought. For reasons that took years to fully understand, the brown tree snake is extraordinarily, almost uniquely, sensitive to it. In a human, a single Tylenol is nothing. In a brown tree snake, a dose smaller than a child's tablet is a death sentence. It takes only about 80 milligrams, roughly a quarter of one standard pill, to kill an adult snake. For comparison, a dog or a pig would have to swallow the equivalent of 500 baited mice to get the same lethal dose. The drug is, in effect, a poison, aimed almost perfectly at this one animal, and at very little else. What it does inside the snake is grim. The acetaminophen attacks the snake's blood, converting the part that normally carries oxygen into a form that can't carry anything at all. The snake's own blood stops delivering oxygen to its body. It slips into a coma, and within a day or two, it is dead. Researchers tested it, confirmed it, and realized they were holding something genuinely rare in the world of invasive species. A tool that could kill the target and almost nothing else. But knowing how to kill the snake and actually reaching it were two completely different problems. You cannot pour poison across an entire jungle, and the brown tree snake doesn't make it easy. It lives up in the trees, hidden in the canopy, scattered across thousands of acres of dense forest. You can't hunt them one by one. There are millions. So the team behind the project, scientists with the United States Department of Agriculture, had to answer a bizarre question. How do you hand-deliver a precise dose of painkiller to a hidden snake, high in a tree, in the middle of a jungle, without poisoning anything else? Their answer is one of the strangest things any government has ever actually done. They started with the bait. Brown tree snakes, unlike most snakes, will happily eat prey that is already dead, scavenging it off the ground or out of the branches. So the team took dead newborn mice, small enough to fit in your palm, and tucked a single 80 milligram tablet of acetaminophen inside each one, a dead mouse, loaded like a tiny capsule. Then came the delivery. They needed the mice to end up in the canopy, where the snakes hunt, and to stay out of reach of anything on the ground, like crabs or lizards that might eat them by mistake. So, they built parachutes. Not real parachutes, something cleverer and cheaper. Each dead mouse gets tied to 2 little strips of cardboard and green tissue paper, folded so they catch the air and, more importantly, catch the branches. A helicopter flies low and slow over the forest, and crews release the mice one at a time, in a steady rhythm, so the bait spreads evenly across the trees. The paper streamers flutter down and snag in the canopy, and the poisoned mice hang there in the leaves, exactly where a hungry snake will go looking. Some of the mice are even fitted with tiny radio transmitters, so the scientists can track whether the bait moves, a sign that a snake has taken it. It sounds insane. It sounds like something out of a cartoon. And against every expectation, it works. Field tests found the parachutes snagged in the canopy about 2/3 of the time. The snakes ate the mice, and the snakes died, while other animals were left unharmed. After decades of invasive species programs that failed or backfired or made things worse, the dead mouse airdrop was something almost unheard of. It actually did its job. But before you call it a victory, there is a catch, and it changes the entire meaning of this story. The catch is this. Nobody involved in the program believes it will ever rid Guam of the brown tree snake. Not the mouse drops, not the traps, not anything. As one of the lead scientists has bluntly put it, there has never even been an attempt to eradicate the snake from Guam because it simply cannot be done. There are too many, spread across too much forest, hidden too well. On Guam, the snake has won. That war is over. We lost. So if we can't save Guam, then what are the mice for? They are for the next island. Because the most dangerous thing about the brown tree snake was never just what it did to Guam. It is where it might go next. Guam is a transportation hub. Cargo and aircraft and ships leave it constantly, bound for other islands across the Pacific, and these snakes are master stowaways. They coil up inside wheel wells, in cargo containers, in the engine blocks of cars, anywhere dark and tight, and they go completely still. They can survive for months without food. A snake can climb into a shipment on Guam and climb out somewhere thousands of miles away. And there is one destination that keeps everyone in this field awake at night: Hawaii. There are direct military flights between Guam and Hawaii is, in almost every way that matters, Guam all over again. No native snakes. Forests full of unique birds that have never had to fear one. The threat is not hypothetical. Over the years, brown tree snakes have already been found in Hawaii again and again. A live one clinging to a wire at Hickam Air Force Base back in 1986. A dead one on the runway at Honolulu Airport. One in a warehouse at Schofield Barracks. One curled in the wheel well of a commercial jet. Each one a near miss. If a single pregnant snake ever slips through and establishes itself, experts believe it could trigger the same collapse, the same silent forests, the same blackouts. The United States Department of Agriculture estimates that a snake invasion of Hawaii could cost more than $2 billion every single year and wipe out as many as 13,000 jobs. Another paradise, hollowed out by the same animal. This is why the mice fall from the sky. Not to win, but to hold a line. To keep the snakes' numbers down around the airfields and ports of Guam so that fewer of them slip into the cargo headed out. And the last line of defense, after the mice, is almost unbelievably humble. It is dogs. Around 16 teams of detector dogs work the island, many of them Jack Russell Terriers pulled from animal shelters back in Georgia, trained to sniff out a single snake hidden in a shipment. One of them, a little terrier named Bonnie, once alerted on a parked car and led her handler to a snake coiled beneath the air filter, somewhere no human eye would ever have found it. When they cut that snake open, it had a freshly swallowed bird still in its stomach. One invasive species, quietly feeding on another. And even now, with all of it, the traps and the mice and the dogs, around 3,000 snakes are still caught every year just along the fence line of one Air Force base. A few slip into the cargo anyway, and the snake keeps adapting. In 2021, scientists on Guam filmed brown tree snakes doing something no snake had ever been recorded doing before. To get over the smooth metal poles we use to protect bird nesting boxes, the snakes invented a brand new way of climbing, looping their bodies into a kind of lasso and shimmying straight up surfaces that were supposed to be snake-proof. The barriers we designed to stop them, they simply solved. That is what we are up against. Not a mindless pest, but an animal that keeps finding the gap in every defense we build. Which brings us back to the helicopter and the dead mice drifting down on their little paper parachutes. Because once you understand the whole picture, the absurd image starts to look less like a joke and more like something almost tragic. The most powerful country on Earth, reduced to dropping painkiller stuffed mice into a jungle, year after year, not to defeat an enemy, but simply to slow it down, to buy time, to protect the islands it hasn't lost yet from a snake it knows it can never truly beat. So I will leave you with the question they wrestle with every time the funding comes up for renewal, and I genuinely want your answer in the comments. Is this worth it? Should the United States keep spending millions of dollars a year, indefinitely, fighting a snake it has already admitted it cannot win against, just to keep it off the next island? Or is a war with no possible ending, no victory, only endless containment? A war we should be fighting some other way. There is no obvious answer, and that is exactly why I want to hear where you land. And if stories like this one, the strange and desperate things we do to fight the nature we have unleashed on ourselves, are what you are here for, then subscribe and stick around. There are far more of them than you would ever guess.